Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. This is one of an occasional series about ships that we don't have, but I think we ought to have. And who knows, maybe will have, although I have no knowledge or say about that. And rather than just talk about it or have AI come up with some slop, I fired up my favorite 3D design software and going to do a real design, at least up to a schematic white box level of detail, so that you can see what it is I'm talking about. In this example, I'm going to talk about one of the earliest ships in the game, and I think it is needing not just a gold pass, but an entire Mark II treatment. Although in this case, it would be the third major revision since its inception. It received a gold pass a while back, but the gold pass did not solve its fundamental flaws, which is why I'm convinced that a more thorough reconcepting of the Mark II is called for. Besides, CIG has really stepped up the design sophistication of this manufacturer, and I really appreciate their newer designs like the Starlight, Starlancer, and Hull B. And with that, I think most of you have guessed that what I'm talking about is the Freelancer series, although with some might have guessed the Starfarer, which has so many problems. I am more interested in what a medium refueler would look like than trying to solve all of the problems of the Starfarer with Mark II. That would have to wait for a new video. So, the challenge of making a Mark II of an existing ship is how do you bring it up to the new style guide and the new functional needs, which, for example, CIG did very well on the Aurora II, while still keeping the essential character and vibe of the original, which I think they did less well on the Aurora II. The new one is just so much larger and complex than the old one that I just don't feel much brotherhood between them. So I set myself a rule that my Mark II version of the Freelancer would fit in the same height, width, and length as the original. It's actually quite a bit shorter, and I would try to not up-weapon the original or to upsize the cargo class. The base is actually 2 SCU less. So let's start with the flaws of the current Freelancer. The cargo bay is horribly inefficient. With the current cargo system, odd dimensions of SCU boxes are inefficient, and the Freelancer has odd dimensions in both the length and height, plus this awkward middle section whose cargo has to fit through an ordinary personnel door. In addition, having 2 aisles on each side of the central cargo grid was inefficient. It did not allow crew to pass each other if they were on the same side of the cargo bay, and when they added components in the gold pass to the walls, they created enough space to work on the components, but not enough to pull and repair and replace them. So, for the redesign, I went with 2 32 SCU containers, one against each wall, and a central aisle that can allow crew to pass each other or to have small vehicles like the Pulse, in addition to the full cargo capacity. I didn't skimp on the headroom, like for example on the Spirit C2 or Hermes, and unlike them, I did not put a choke point at the rear. The entire cargo width is available if instead you want to load rovers. Being able to carry larger vehicles was a strong selling point of the Freelancer, and I did not want to sacrifice it in a Freelancer Mark II. You will also note that I added a remote tractor beam turret and changed the tail turret to be a remote turret rather than a man turret. The awkward entrance and exit requirements of the man turret was a major headache on the original Freelancer. This gives the body of my new redesign wider proportions, but I stayed within the footprint of the original Freelancer by sacrificing the wings, but kept side pods containing maneuvering and takeoff thrusters, which I felt was more part of the character of the Freelancer series. Moving around to the front of the new design, the wider proportions of the body allowed for a bridge where the second row of seats had unobstructed forward views. The turrets are now intended to be remote turrets controlled by these 2 seats, which get slaved to the pilot if the seats are unoccupied. The co-pilot is able to control the rear turret and tractor beam, so now there is a rationale for this being a 4-person bridge. Compared to the Mark I design, the side turrets are moved a little forward, and the space behind the bridge seats contains space for smaller components such as radar, life support, battery, fuse box, etc., and for pistol storage. Immediately past the door from the bridge is the familiar 4-bunk configuration of the Freelancer series, except now I made their ejection function a more visible feature from the exterior. Rearward from the bunks, in the same room, on the port side is a small mess with kitchen, table, sink, etc., and on the starboard side a full walk-in bath with separate toilet, sink, and shower in it. Each of these feature a nice vertical viewport to the outside. through the rearward door from the crew living area. On the port side is a full-size airlock with suit and gun lockers inside the airlock itself. I was pleased that the extra body width allowed for a realistically functional airlock that did not need to evacuate living spaces to work. Then on the starboard side is the engineering center of the ship. I gave an oversized top intake on the outside as a nod to the large arch on the top of the original design. The round retro thrusters on the side seem to be a standard part of the new MISC design language. So this isn't a finished design. In particular, it's missing all those wonderful little details that make Star Citizen ships feel so special. It was meant as a proof of concept, and I'm quite confident that the Freelancer Mark II along these lines would bring it back to being a compelling competitor to ships like the C-2. The design is 128 meters long, 22.6 meters beam, and 6.5 meters tall, compared to the current Freelancer, which is 38 meters long, 23.5 meters wide, and 9.5 meters tall. The current Freelancer is sold with a value of $110 US. I think that this rework could sell for 10 or 15 more than that. But of course, the Freelancer is part of a series of ships, and so should the Freelancer 2. The Freelancer 2 MISC would change the cargo bay from holding 2 32 SU containers to holding 2 24 SU containers, which would be an upgrade from the current 36 SU to 48. That would make room for a pair of missile carousels with the ability to be reloaded from missiles stored in the cargo hold. I was able to fit 22 missiles in each, which would be nearly doubling the current design. Of course, CIG could intentionally set the number to less, but the room for it exists. And then the currently most popular Freelancer, the Freelancer Max. Can this model also be stretched double wide to the Freelancer 2 Max? Well, yes, although it looks a bit like it's having trouble fitting into its clothes. But then again, so does the current Freelancer Max design. But look at that yummy cargo mouth with a ceiling high enough to be able to easily take on snub fighters. I experimented with going double high instead of double wide, but it just didn't feel like the Max. So I said at the start, I have no inside information and even less inside leverage, but based on the design, I think the Freelancer 2 would be a great ship and likely quite popular. So now for the channel events. For the Captain's members, we have the VRU at Squadron 42 for a VR headset when Squadron goes live, which I'm now projecting for the end of the year, so the value of the headset will likely be a little larger. So this is still a good time to join the Captain's level or consider upgrading. For everyone else, this video will qualify for both the IAE Week giveaway of the Galaxy, which is planned to be that new big flyable ship for this year's IAE in November, and then also for next year's DefenseCon, or whatever they will be calling it, my giveaway for the Banu Merchantman. One entry per video. Members at any level are entered automatically. Everyone else just comments somehow, including the secret word. And the secret word for this video will be, what ship do you think needs a Mark II treatment? Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Daniel Raymond with Ray's Guide.